You're tuned in to RX Radio.
It's 2 weeks in a row. Number 2.
Yo, look at the consistency here. We should get a subscribe for that.
That's the same as like the guy who like had a cigarette for breakfast and goes, I quit smoking. It's like, how many hours has it been? It's like three, 2 episodes in a row of people who host their podcast hosting their podcast is like not really something. Like imagine showing up to work on Friday. It goes, I worked a whole week. It's like, yeah, you should. It's nice to be back. It's nice to have this on the calendar, man.
It's good, man. I just told you, this is meditation. I need this. Hour of my week to do this.
It's which is funny because we always choose topics that are a little bit contentious. They kind of get us a little. I guess it's an outlet, right? Like,
oh yeah, fuck yeah. This is for us, and other people seem to enjoy it.
I think. Well, if it wasn't, there's no way we would keep doing it. I forget the statistics on podcast attrition, but it's something ridiculous. There's like, I don't know, 10 million podcasts in the world, but only like 1,000 get like 99% of the listens or something like that. I think we're part of that 1,000.
Yeah.
In the interest of keeping with the theme of consistency, if you haven't subscribed to RX Radio, whatever you're listening to on, whether it's Spotify, Apple, or watching us on YouTube, just hit the subscribe button. Our goal before June of 2026 is to be in the top 50 on Apple and Spotify, which would make us the youngest fitness podcast on Apple and Spotify's top 50 by about 130 years, because it's all just fucking dinosaurs. I'll tell you what's a big one, which is weird, that's getting into health and fitness, like into those charts, is like sex podcasts.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. What are people doing? Are they listening to this at work? Are they like, it's a little bit concerning.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't even get that far because I couldn't even take myself to like, it's like in high school, we had to read To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay.
Right. Like, but audiobooks were still years off, but you could actually go to the library and get books on tape. So I did that. I'm like, oh, if I can read this stupid book, I'll get the book on tape. Then I found out they'd made a movie about it. Same thing.
See where you're going.
Same thing. I was like, wait, I got a couple of VHSs over here somewhere. I'm going to be this podcast for it. And so do that if you wouldn't mind. And even if you do mind, do it anyways. We appreciate it. Now, a topic, and this is how we come up with topics. We go through podcasts and we look at titles and go, well, they probably did that wrong. We should probably do that right. And I think one that we haven't touched, I don't know if we've ever touched this specifically. That is just like it's a hot button podcast topic title at the very least, is fat loss.
Yeah.
And I think it's worthy of a good amount of, and I'm just going to say it off the rip. If you're serious about, how do I put it this way? I've never met anyone who's got in really good shape who's ever used the word belly fat. If you're coming to this looking for tips to lose belly fat, go somewhere else. That's like thing number one, because you're already off to the wrong foot, right? Like when you're talking about belly fat, you have a misrepresentation of what it is the thing that you're trying to achieve actually is, right? So you're already one behind the 8 ball if your goal is to lose belly fat. You're already displaying a basic misunderstanding, or a misunderstanding of basic physiological principles, right? So this idea of that we can just lose fat around a certain region, not it. Right. So the serious people who get in serious shape and lose a lot of fat, they at least know enough to know that it's not going to be local, right? That this is a global process that can be relatively time consuming. So I think it's something that was worthwhile exploring, because the principles of fat loss are not hard. Now, the application of these principles can be difficult. And I think there's a conversation to be had in the middle ground between the objective and subjective of fat loss. And I think it's something where there's usually people on either sides of the aisle that go, losing fat isn't difficult. It just requires you to do da 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 da. And it's like, okay, most people aren't autistic robots, and doing those things is actually hard. The annoying thing when you train people is that they tend to have like emotions and shit, and that's where things go off the rails. So I think approaching fat loss with like what, not objectively, but not purely subjectively, but being somewhere in the middle of going like recognizing the objective markers that we need to hit while understanding the subjective experience of the person trying to hit those objective markers. I think that's sort of an initial framing for fat loss that would see most people well before they kick off on this endeavor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good point. And I consider myself in a lot of ways a very patient person.
You've dealt with me for way too long.
Not always, but a lot of ways, especially when it comes to like what I do as my profession, right? I understand that not everyone is going to have the same level of understanding. And I also understand that my job in those cases is to bridge the gap between where they're at and where they need to go. And that takes a lot of patience. The one thing that I've never found to have enough patience for in my entire career is counseling people on their diet. And I mean, in like a true, like, you're going to get the fucking results kind of way, because I just don't have the fucking patience for it. And it's the hard part of that is the psychological and the emotional side for me, because people's diet is very emotional. It is very personal to them. And they have a lot of beliefs and values that don't necessarily align with their goals. And that's the hard part for me, is like, I have no problem telling people that their exercise and their movement and their rehab values and the things that they tend to believe around that are wrong, and that there's a better way to do them. That's what I do for a living. And you know what I don't do? Fucking nutrition coaching, because I don't have it in me. I'm not equipped to do that in most cases, because it is just this constant overcoming objection, this constant pushback, and this constant battle between what they should be doing and what they are doing, and then getting to the root causes and identifying why they're not doing what they should be doing, even though they know well what they should be doing. And there's these things that come and they get in the way. And it's just so personal. I think that's the thing. I think in a lot of cases, in this one particularly, people are their worst enemies when it comes to weight loss. And I think it is very much the psychological side of things, because like you said, the physiological side of things, it's pretty fucking simple. Like, you burn more calories than you consume and you're going to lose weight. You skew the macros in a direction that biases losing fat over losing muscle and bone density, and you'll lose fat. You'll lose proportionately more fat than other sources of weight. And like, that's kind of it. Like, yes, there's nuance to this and there's better and worse ways to go about it, of course. But the hard part for me in having this conversation, which is why I'm glad that I'm having it with you in this means, and I don't have to have it with a client that's paying me to be patient, is I just don't have the fucking patience. Like, it's an uphill battle, I feel like, in a lot of cases for the people that are seeking out help to lose fat or belly fat. It just shows that there's such a disconnect between their habits, their accountability, their ability to stick to a regimen, and their goals. And that's such a hard gap for me to bridge personally. So if you're out there fighting the fight, good for you. I have a lot of respect for it.
So I think I share the sympathies of just like having a hard time. And over the years, my patience has really just, it's forced me to just let the dogmas kind of win. Right. Because, a lot of the nutrition physiology banter on the internet is people who are, well-meaning, well-intentioned, and well-read on the science behind, fat loss and nutrition and all that. But with every, master's or PhD degree, every course they went to is one less time they actually spent training actual people. So there seems to be like a systemic denouncement of what I call like diet identities or diet dogmas.
Yes.
And I just don't think it's useful. It's like, these are like, look, this is something that offers someone support and structure. Great. That's half the battle. Like it's no different in a lot of ways I see to training where you and I have both had clients that have particular ways that they like to do things. And it's like, okay, I can come in and I can be a battering ram, right? It's almost like the old, it's like the wind and the sun parable. I don't know if you ever heard that, where it's like, there's the wind and the sun are up in the sky and they look at a guy at the street corner and he's standing there with his jacket on and the wind goes to the sun. I go, I bet you I can get that guy to take his jacket off, or I bet you get that guy's jacket off. And, so the wind just whips up a big storm and the guy just holds on to the jacket tighter. And then the wind's thinking that he's just going to blow the jacket right off and it doesn't work. And the sun goes, hold my beer. And it just heats up a little bit. The guy takes his jacket off, right? Like that's kind of like, okay, someone likes to train a certain way. Someone likes to eat a certain way. Or they're thinking of training. Hey, what do you think of High Rocks? Great. Love it. High Rocks is awesome. What do you think? Awesome. You're making a decision, or no, not even making it. You've made a decision already. You may be in the pre-contemplation phase of acting on the decision. But when you bring like, what do you think of keto? What do you think of this? I'm like, I think that you're thinking about keto is my thought about keto. I think that you're thinking about High Rocks, which is my thought about High Rocks. And when you do this for long enough, you go, this is doing the lifting for me. This is going to be the structure and the support that this person needs for this thing to be successful, for them to attempt to make a change. So we're already because there's pre-contemplation, contemplation, and action, right? Those are like sort of the phases of behavior change. It's like they've made a step already. Don't put them back to go on the board. PubMed ID. It's like, you fucking idiot. You idiot. Like, well, I'm sitting here watching the wind of the industry blow up a storm. And I'm just going to go, yeah, High Rocks. How many times a week do you think you could do that? Okay, cool. Get them in the fucking gym. Oh God, I was so sore. Well, this is how we could maybe like mitigate the soreness a little bit. Not like, it's just, it blows my mind that in an industry that is service-based, right? Like that is dealing with the inexact science of human science. People just like want to be right. It's like, why? So you don't want to live that life in your head, dog. High Rocks, keto, low carb, high protein. Great. Structure and support. That's where diets fail. And look, education is great. We own an education company. But at the same time, it's like, if you're interested in the result, you can't provide the structure and support. You probably don't want to, right? You pull your fucking hair out. That one of these diet identities can provide. So it's just like training in the sense where I've had clients who go, oh, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z exercise, or I want to do X, Y, and Z exercise. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes. Okay. And I go, yeah, great. If I got $1, you know what I probably do? I probably have $1 in my bank for every time I said the words, yeah, great.
Yes.
Right? Like you're not going to get anywhere by like disaffirming their initial pre-contemplation. It's like confirm that, move them to action. And then once you get them moving, then you just continue to solve problems and you get to shape this in a way that makes sense. So when it comes down to belly fat, I think from a practical perspective, and there's obvious, like, I want to be a fucking fruitarian or something. You're like, all right, okay, like, let's go back to go, scrap it. But like, low carb, high carb, paleo, keto is something, if I'm looking at something from, from cruising altitude and I go, this will probably land them in something looking like a calorie deficit. We're probably going to have protein right where we need it. That's really it. Like, honestly, that's where I would start. And then as you go into it, you can start to tailor some of the micronutrition. You can start to tailor, some of the other macronutrients. You can start to work on nutrient timing and performance. But like, people actually have no idea how good it feels to feel good, right?
Yeah,
and it's like,
so true.
There's this idea, like, and they can't. You and I have been training more of our life than we haven't been training, and we think that we can create like a express train from where they are to how they feel to where we are to how we feel. It's like, you can't get here from there, right? We need to build and stack. And it's like, if something comes out of the box with a structure and support built into it, great. Let's fucking use that. And I think that's where a lot of coaches who are smart, who are well-read, who don't have wisdom, that's where they end up, is denouncing those things. It's like, John Bond, who's a friend of the show, was on the podcast a few weeks ago. He posted something maybe 6 or 7 months ago, and it really stuck with me. And it's kind of like a pun of what we're talking about now. And he goes, what did it say? It said, knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing you don't put it in fruit salad. That. And I think like that's a really good place to start. So I think maybe an interesting transition would be, and I wouldn't say that neither of us are the most up to speed on the diet identities, but like what's out right now that if someone came to you and said, I want to start eating this way, you would go, okay, what are like the top 3 of like, I mean, I can think of mine probably, and I don't really know them that well, but I'm curious if you have a framework of like, or people who eat, you live in the Silicon Valley and people do all types of weird shit.
Yeah. I think the 3 that I get most are like vegan or plant-based.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I think keto's still around a bit in that aspect. And maybe carnivore if they're not the same thing. I get a lot of those. Yeah. And I recently had a client who was she was an older woman. She was vegan on her own volition. No one forced her to be. And she was very weak and in a lot of pain. And that's someone that I worked with. And so let me start out this way. I have a tattoo on my right arm that says, ouch. I got it in your living room in Miami. The reason I got that was because in my life, it's been something that's held true that I need to learn lessons on my own. And that causes a lot of pain when you do it that way. Is you can tell me what's right. You can tell me the best way to do something. But unless I go through and I run into those walls on my own, I'm not going to truly learn that lesson. And that's something I feel very strongly about for myself. And that kind of echoes into the way that I handle all conversations with all humans, but especially clients. And like, I think it's very relevant in a situation like this. So for this lady in particular, she had no exercise experience, was in a lot of pain, no strength, no bone density, and she wanted to eat vegan. I said, okay, all right, we can do that. Because the thing is, when you have very little experience, everything works. Anything will work, right? We can make very small changes and get positive results. And it's almost like a funnel. Like at the top, this is no experience. And then as we go down, this is more experience. Less things work down here than they do up here. So what I like to do is I'll just kind of be like, okay, I'll shake my head. Be like, all right, you're an idiot, but I'm going to let you find that out. I'm not going to tell you, because I feel like when people understand these things, or they come to these realizations on their own, it's a lot more impactful than if they were to come to me for help. And I'm like, you're an idiot. We're not going to do that. So I'm just going to shake my head. I'm like, okay, we can do vegan. We can do carnivore. We can do keto. We can do whatever, insert whatever fad diet it is. And then what I'm going to do, knowing kind of their limitations on progress with those constraints that they've put in place, I'm going to run them into the edge of that funnel. They're going to run into a wall, and I'm going to put them there. It's like this lady, first session with her, I'm like, all right, we're going to do lunges. She hasn't done a fucking lunge. I put her on a support with like 2 boxes on both sides. She did 5 reps of a lunge on each leg, and she was sore for a week. So then the conversation I had, she came back. This wouldn't have worked if she didn't come back. The conversation I had next time I saw her was like, oh yeah, that really sucks that happened. But a way that we can really get you to have progress faster and recover faster is if we can increase your protein intake. So she saw the repercussion of the decision she was making in very real time, and I gave her a solution for that. It's like, okay, so we just need to increase protein intake, and you're not going to be as sore. Okay, let's do that. Let's set a goal. She was literally eating like 20 grams of protein a day. I'm like, let's eat 60 grams of protein a day. And like showed her how to track it, and like showed her where it is on the label and all this stuff. She comes back. We do 8 lunges next week, and she's not as sore. I'm like, see, it worked. And you kind of you have to let them find out the hard way, and they have to run into these walls on their own sometimes before that decision becomes theirs. Because I can make that decision for you, and I can tell you, all right, like you're 200 pounds, you're way overweight, like you need to be eating at least 160 grams of protein per day. Like you're going to be having 4 shakes a day and eating, let's be real, you're going to have 7 shakes a day because you're vegan and you're going to be eating nothing else. Like it's, no one's going to actually take to that advice. And the changes have to be subtle enough that they can be consistent and they can continually implement them. But from my experience, they have to be their decision, right? You can nudge them in the right direction. You can steer that ship in a way that's going to make that decision, it's going to force them to make that decision sooner. But I think it's a lot more impactful if they realize that, okay, I'm the problem here. I need to change my behavior or else this isn't going to work.
Yeah, I think the idea of, and this is where I see a lot of coaches go wrong, is so many coaches track nutrition and don't track training. And it's like, dude, what are you tying this to, right? Like, I love the idea that you're like 5 reps, 8 reps, sore as fuck, not as sore. And it's like, this is the very tangible, visceral thing. Now, if you're doing nutrition coaching as a separate service, I totally understand. But if you're doing like full spec coaching and you're doing training and nutrition, I know people that are just like prescribing exercise and not really tracking subjective quality, not really tracking subjective interpretation. How do things feel? Like, I've had clients that eat like fucking pigeons, and when they break bad, and here's the thing, like, I've had a similar scenario where someone comes in and they go, yo, and I'm like, what up? And like, I ate a bunch of pancakes this morning. And like, you can see the guilt in their eyes. I'm like, oh, we're cooking today. Finally, we got some gas in the tank. Right. And I'm going to put them in a situation where, like, all right, we're going to use this available energy, right? Yeah. I'm not going to, this is not, no, scrap the cardio, miss me with that. We're going to grab the weights. We're hitting PRs today, right? Like, we're going to use this. And like, wow, like, I feel like that was crazy. I got like 5 more reps. Like, yes, you did. Food, right? You eat like a fucking pigeon the rest of the time. It's like, I'm not saying we eat pancakes every day, but I think the biggest thing with nutrition, and this is where I think nutrition coaches that do it solely, and not all, but people who solely do nutrition coaching, inputs drive outputs, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, when we can really celebrate the wins from performance, that's when the body composition goals start to be achieved, right? That's what's really going to reshape it. Because, like, here's the thing with fat loss, is it's not weight loss. Fat loss isn't weight loss. You can gain muscle in a deficit, sure, right? But what people are saying when they say fat loss is like, they want to look better, right? Yes. And look better is not a number on the scale. It could correlate, but oftentimes it can correlate in the other direction, right? I've had clients who've trained for months on end, 6 months, where they've had to like go to the tailors and redo their suits, and then they get on the scale and they come in when they go, hey, I haven't lost a pound in 6 months, and I'm like, what? Why is that a concern of yours? Like, well, I wanted to lose weight. It's like, no, you didn't. You wanted to look better. Yeah. Right. And so there's a difference. So you got to kind of, and again, this is where performance tracking is really going to give you the data. Like, obviously performance tracking gives you the data on how to prescribe performance, but performance data is going to be where you're getting your data to prescribe nutrition. Right. And because it's not like you're just trying to feed people into some deficit so much so that they can't perform. Because like, there's this deficit and there's some debate around this. There's sort of your basal metabolic rate, your daily processes of staying alive that are energy expensive. So basically, the number of calories you're going to burn within a given day, just doing it before exercise is involved. Exercise as an activity, as an hour and 10 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever it is, it's not going to be super energy expensive from a caloric standpoint. It will create a demand to partition the macro and micronutrients that we use in a particular way, but exercise itself is not going to be a meaningful reduction. However, I think there seems to be a movement that's too nutrition centric, where it's like the caloric deficit in your training session doesn't matter. It's like, hold on a second. I don't think that's true. I mean, and because like obviously it matters, but people are like, it's 90% diet. It's like, one, it depends on how intense your training is. And two, it depends on how controlled your diet is. Because the thing is, I would rather feed someone 10% more and get 30% output, 30% more output, right? So it's like one of the things that I try and this is where being performance oriented in your approach is super useful is showing that, look, like the scale is one metric, right? And if we can, once a week up on the scale and it moves or doesn't, or we do a DEXA scan and it moves or it doesn't, these are points of affirmation that are far apart. We can have points of affirmation every single set, every single rep can be a point of affirmation that the way we're eating is improving our trajectory, our aim towards our goal. And I think that from a psychological perspective is where a lot of nutrition coaching goes wrong, is they aim this thing at an increment too far, right? Like one of the reasons, so like, I mean, you don't get to be fucking 285, 290, whatever I was without liking a bit of food. I would never, even to this day, ever sacrifice my nutrition before a workout. Like if my nutrition were to fuck up, like if I were to just YOLO on God knows what I order on Uber Eats before I've never done that. The bad decisions I make, that the reason I'm not 4% body fat, happen between the hours of when I'm done my workout and when I go to bed. That's the window. That's when right. Like I'm open for business after my workout. I'm Ronnie fucking Coleman from the moment I wake up to the second I start my set. And then at the end of it, I'm fucking Homer Simpson. Right. But like that helps me because now it's like, well, when I want to lose weight or when I want to lose fat, I push my workouts way later in my day. I don't have a dumb window of time. Like I can only binge for so long before I just fall asleep with the Ben and Jerry's just on my face. Right. So, but understanding that when you can get your clients in a performance mindset, you can start to celebrate these wins. And you want to talk about structure and support. That's going to be where you can really support and start to affirm the decisions that we're making. Soreness being one. Right. Number of reps executed, number two. And then not to mention the subjective feeling of how you're working. I've started training earlier in the morning because I like making bad decisions. And one of the things the other day, I woke up extra early, still got a decent amount of sleep. I woke up extra early and I ate a meal before I trained. Oh my God, dude. I didn't know that you could feel that good that early, right? Like up 10 minutes earlier, had, some protein, some carbs, had a shake, and then went into my workout. I was like, I'm so much stronger. And so it's just that idea of like, okay, if you want to focus on losing fat, focus on your training, right? Documenting your reps and sets so you can start to have a meaningful metric of your output, because all you're doing when you track the scale is you're tracking your input.
Yeah.
That's only half the battle.
I love it. I'm going to double down on that because for the majority, if not all of my coaching career, I've worked with performance athletes to some degree, right? And even the people that aren't performance athletes in the traditional sense, like I coach them in a performance oriented way. And I think that's the best way to get results. One of my biggest frustrations in coaching, it's mostly weightlifters and like not necessarily novice, but like intermediate level weightlifters, has been the idea of changing body composition while still chasing performance. And I think there's a way to do it. Absolutely. But it is along the lines of what you said. It's like, no, we're not going to focus on losing weight in a performance phase because the thing that's going to be affected is performance. Like you can't be in a calorie deficit and expect to perform better, period. Like I'll stand by that. And like, maybe there's fringe cases and like very beginner athletes or like freak athletes where it's not just physiological, like there is a heavy psychological component to this, but in terms of like physiological output, you need calories to do it. And you need a surplus of them, or at least enough of them to fuel the performance that we're asking of our body. And there's this idea that like training pushes performance and diet modifies body composition, and they're two separate things when they're not. They're so intertwined together that that's when I see most people get hurt, is when they continue to try to push performance while in a calorie deficit, right? And the word body composition is really important here, because it is, like you said, it's not necessarily fat loss, it's not necessarily muscle gain, it's the proportions of which are happening, or the rate at which either of those is happening, right? You can have someone that is, their body composition is that of oatmeal, and we can we can focus on, they can eat the same amount of calories, but if they're eating just high carbohydrate, high fat diet, low protein, and we keep those calories the same, but we switch the proportions, higher protein, moderate carbohydrate, lower fat, then we still have the amount of relative energy in, but that's going to allow us to push the scale for body composition in a more favorable way, where now we actually have the available building blocks, the amino acids that we break protein down into to rebuild muscle. We have that, and we have hopefully a surplus of that, so that we can now go into a workout, we can damage our muscles, we can come out of that workout, have enough building blocks to replenish that and recover in a meaningful way, where now we're turning oatmeal man into, I don't know, a food with more integrity, maybe a chicken thigh man. but but there, the idea that I'm trying to get at here is that, like, you're right, most people, their goal is not necessarily fat loss, their goal is to look a certain way. And to look a certain way, it comes down to performance. There's very few situations where the way that someone wants to look, outside of maybe eating disorders, that it doesn't require more muscle. And even in those cases, like, people are probably going to like the way they look if they have more muscle on their frame. So it's not necessarily just an equation of losing fat. It's the balance of losing fat and gaining muscle within proportions that still allow you to do the ladders, to gain that muscle. And I think that's where people go wrong, is they think that they can just, train themselves to the performance that they want and eat themselves to the body composition that they want, as two separate things. But they are one goal, and they need to be complementary, or you're not going to have the results that you want in either of those realms.
Yeah, the out train a bad diet thing is like, I come at it from two perspectives. One, I think much like training, one of the biggest factors influencing the way I approach training and nutrition is age.
Mhm.
Because when I look at training, you look at it like a skill. When I look at body composition, I also look at it as a skill, right? Like, being lean is a skill, right? Having muscle is a skill, and which means it's multifaceted and it's multifactorial, and it's not just this inputs and outputs. It's the what is the uh, strategy without tactics is the slow road to victory, and tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Have you ever heard that?
I have not.
So that's when I think about, that's what is it? Sun Tzu, or The Art of War. So strategy without tactics is the long road to victory, and tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. And it's the thing that you have to realize, and this is where I think age plays a big factor in both of these, is in order for someone to learn something, they have to unlearn something first, in a lot of cases. And that is more true the older someone is, right? Even, and this is where diet and nutrition kind of diet, nutrition, take a departure from training, is that eating habits have been established over their entire life, however long that's been. And that creates a sort of a spiral, a dovetail effect, because there's physiological expectations based off of the way that you eat, right? Training doesn't have that, right? If someone hasn't trained, it's a little bit easier. Now, like the relationship with gravity is something that we have to kind of factor in, but it's way easier to teach someone how to train who's never trained than teach someone how to eat who's in poor shape, right? Because it's like, oh, you got to unlearn a lot of shit, right? So the older it is, and when I hear people, and I understand where they're coming from, but I think something that we have to contextualize when we're talking about that, can you outtrain a bad diet, is how old are you, right? Like, dude, I tell you now, and this isn't some like woe is me shit, but it's like when I needed to get lean when I was younger, like when I needed to cut weight when I was in my mid-20s,
Yeah.
give me 6 days.
Right.
Right? Like, give me 6 days, I'll lose 46 pounds. I'll have fucking veins in my abs, and then 24 hours later, I'll be up 35 pounds again. So I think now there's a lot that goes into that. But I think that the essence of that is true. When you're younger, your output can be higher and your inputs are more flexible. When you're older, your output isn't going to be as high, and your inputs are a little bit more rigid, right? Like you're a little bit more stuck in your ways. And it's not just a mentality thing, although that's a big part of it. It's the physiology that has adapted to a consistent psychological framework of eating, right? Like, and this is where the subtle changes are big, because just like training, where someone comes in and they're like, when you work with Olympic weightlifters, people want to learn Olympic weightlifting. It may be weeks or months until there's a bar over someone's head, right? Like, because there's been a physical response to the way that they've approached training or not. They have limitations in range of motion. It's the same with nutrition. It's like you come in one day and just overhaul, like, all right, man, we're going to completely flip the strategy on its head, because psychologically, it may be easy, it may be difficult, but the physiology based off of the way they've made decisions has adapted. This is how they get energy, right? This is the preferred source of ATP, right? They feel like they have low blood sugar. Like your blood sugar is maple syrup. Trust me, y'all. You don't have low blood sugar. Like it's not. I'm like how many fat people I feel like dog. You're fine. You could live off yourself for like a month. But it's the psychology that shapes the physiology, and it kind of creates that loop. So it's like when we start to talk about training and nutrition and body composition, chronological age plays a huge factor. Like a huge factor. And it is this how ingrained has the psychology ingrained and replicated the psychology. This is what I do because this is what I've done. But then how has that repetitive loop of the psychology and the way that they make decisions around training, around food, how has that then compounded in their physiology and their physiological responses to the decision that they made, right? Like, getting people to eat more is one of like the difficult parts of training for body recomposition. And you're kicking down a psychological barrier first, but there's on the other side of that, there's another wall, there's another door of their physiology that goes, I don't know what to do with this food volume. I've seen coaches almost kill people with fiber intake, straight up hospitalized. Like, wow. You should be getting X 40, 60 grand. This person, if it's like not a sugar alcohol, their body has no idea what fiber is. Dude, I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking when I say that people have been in the emergency room with full blockages of their bowel. Just like, it's like, but like, what, dude, how is the psychology of someone who's never eaten fiber, who hasn't considered it as part of their diet, how has that decision manifested in itself in the physiology and an inability to process this thing? And it's like all of a sudden you go like, oh man, fiber is this, that, and that. Yeah, great, cool, fiber, whatever, I'm here for it. But going from 0 to 100 is like, you gotta ramp that up slowly, right? And that all starts with like the mindset of like, we're going to introduce a little bit of this and that, because if their mindset is, yeah, no, I don't touch that stuff, blah, blah, broccoli's poison, whatever. And you go, okay, well, you're wrong. Fuck you, eat 40. And then all of a sudden they're in the hall. It's like, good luck getting that recurring payment next month. Like they're paying their hospital bills because you put them in the 1 foot in the grave with broccoli. Like it's just something where, and to kind of circle back to my point, it's not something I hear talked about often. Like people will contextually gerrymander their point of view to be right. And it's like one of the things that I never hear in the context of nutrition is age. Age is going to be, in my opinion, one of the biggest, in my experience, one of the biggest determining factors in our ability to and their ability to sort of switch gears in their nutrition, right? Because it's like, it's one thing to adopt a mindset of eating at a deficit or eating a different micro or macronutrient profile. It's another thing entirely to have a physiology that can support and adapt to that change quickly.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And it all comes down to potential for adaptability, right? Like we can talk training. Like I remember when I was 18 years old, like it literally didn't matter what I ate. I would just make sure what I ate was the majority of my calories came from a bag that looked like a dog food bag that had a scooper that looked like a sandcastle mold that was optimum nutrition weight gainer that my dad kept telling me I was going to get diabetes and I didn't understand why, but it was all like waxy maize. Like,
72 grams of carbs per serving. I know.
Oh, per scoop. One serving is 2 scoops.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Serious mass by optimum nutrition.
That's it, man. And I used to buy the bags that were expired or close to expired because no one in their right mind would ever want that shit. And it was like $12. It's fantastic.
Jesus. Yeah.
But
holy fuck.
That's the thing is like at that age, it didn't fucking matter. There were calories there and like the hormones were there to support it. And now at this age, I would give myself diabetes in 4 minutes. By the time I finished the shake, I would have diabetes. And it's not very different from training that all this compounds, whether it's in a positive or a negative way, right? Like if you've been training your whole life and you've been training like an idiot, like there's consequences. There's compounding consequences over time. If you give yourself degenerative arthritis in your lumbar spine, or if you give yourself like a chronic tendonitis in the knee, there's going to be implications. Movement patterns are going to change. Your structure is going to change, and it's going to really pigeonhole you into what you can do later in life. And your diet is no different. Right. If you just abuse your body with the things that you're eating and the things that you're consuming, like there are consequences to that. And that's, I think, a big part of this conversation, just like you're saying, is like what trajectory has been set for this person throughout the prior years of their life. And if we're talking someone that's 25, 30, it's like, all right, like you're just getting started, hopefully. We have a lot of ability to change that trajectory or at least kind of blunt that curve and then start to change the direction that it's heading in versus someone that's just been like, like 62-year-old vegan lady. Like that's a really hard trajectory to change to someone that's that late in life. They have such a blunted capacity just to move, not even talking about like metabolic capacity, hormonal profile. Like the further those things go unchecked, the more of a hole you're digging yourself into. And it's going to be harder and harder to dig yourself out of that. The benefits of something like that is you will see changes relatively quickly, but you're just so far off baseline. You're so far below baseline that it's going to take you so long to get back to that point where it's like, all right, this is, where you should be at for your age in life, like in terms of both movement capacity, in terms of, just health markers are a big one, like cholesterol, blood pressure, like insulin sensitivity, things like that. That's the trajectory we're talking about when we're talking about like adaptability throughout your life. And it does get harder to change those things the older that you get, just because you don't have the same capacity, or you set a trajectory that is not conducive towards looking the way that you want to look. So there's a very real limitation with that. And that's something that there has to be education around. And a lot of people, there's a lot of information out here, but it's the people that aren't looking for that or don't understand that. Like it blows my mind that there's people that'll be in, even our age or like 40s, 50s that don't understand the implications of their diet on their health and their physical capacity. That's a really hard thing for me to kind of wrap my mind around just because of how entrenched I am in this. And I think that's one of the things that makes me not well enough equipped to have these conversations, because I'm just not as sensitive to it. Right. There has to be a level of sensitivity around this. And like, you're dealing with a person at the end of the day. So it is a conversation. You have to be very reactive to uh, their experience level, their education level. And it has to be things that you can create sustainable change around. And that's the hard part for me, is that it's, you know, we work with a lot of people that are like, you tell them what to do and they get it done. Right. And that's the way that my brain works. But someone who says that they want change, but they're not willing to do the things that are consistent with that change, that's where I struggle with this.
Yeah. To me, it just keeps coming back to performance, because bone density, hormone panels, lipids, liver panel, like all of these things, they take time, right? They take time to see these health markers move.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have had X number of conversations about blood pressure, right?
Yes.
Like these things take time. And even like nutritional changes, like feeling better, right? Like going through and introducing like fiber, we talked about, like
Yeah.
understanding like, oh, like you can't just digest fiber. Maybe there's a gut issue. We're not going to like just eat cream of rice forever because that's avoiding the problem. We're going to understand that like, hey, we're going to introduce some incrementally within a tolerance of digestibility and the feeling that comes along with that, but know that we're working towards like, okay, yeah, all that, sure, that's going to take time. But the training adaptations that you could make, we get to test and retest and win every single day. And
Yeah.
I think that's where people are missing the real opportunity for structure and support in nutrition coaching, is in the exercise prescription. Because when you can tie that in, it's like, yes, this increase in 3 reps, this increase in an extra set, this increase in 5 pounds, that happened between this week and last week. And like you said with the funnel, it's like everything kind of works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think tracking it, being able to put a mirror in front and be like, hey, a large part of what's driving this ship is the subtle changes we're making in nutrition. And then being able to like forecast out, like, look, by the time you're pressing, 20-30% more, or by the time you're squatting with a barbell, by the time you're doing this, and punctuating the weight loss, fat loss, body composition with very real and tangible physical output skills, is something that just allows them to stay on track much sooner, because it's like the time in between the blood labs improving, the time in between sometimes the scale moving, right,
Mm-hmm.
is such a long reward loop that people are just going to. But if every day you're tying in this idea that, hey, that what moved that 5 extra reps this week was the protein, right? What moved that that extra set on that was the extra hour of sleep that you've been getting. What moves the ability to unlock this range of motion is your hydration, right? Like being able to, because that is every single day. You're like, oh wow, high five. I'm getting these feedbacks, these positive psychological feedbacks that are linked both psychologically and physiologically to the physiology of the changes that you're making, right? Rather than blood pressure shit, your health markers are off, your EKGs, blah 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 blah. It's like, we're going to do this for 14 weeks and then we're going to retest. It's like, I don't get a window into my progress for 14 weeks, but it's like every single exercise, and again, if thought out in conjunction with the deficit, the protein intake, the rest of the lifestyle, the chronological age, the lifting age, like there's a lot to orchestrate an effective training program where body composition, fat loss, weight loss is in part one of the goals, and it's not just performance. And if you can select those exercises effectively and understanding sort of the metabolic state that your clients are in, you can celebrate nutritional wins in every workout, which is not where people conventionally look at those wins. They look at it on scales, they look at it on blood labs, they look at it on, sphygmomanometers and blood pressure and all that shit. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, sure. But those are proxies, right? Those are proxies to the everyday wins. And if you want to drive adherence, being able to celebrate these everyday wins with performance is, in my opinion, obviously biased because this is primarily what we do. That's how we drive the psychology and the physiology, is linking those two things together on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And to add on to that, I think you as a trainer, you as a coach, if this is something you're working with someone on, your goal is to tie those things together, because those are like, people don't realize how connected these things are. So you need to make that painfully obvious to them. Is you need to tell them, this is because we changed X, Y, and Z. This is because you're eating more protein. And you need to link those two things together because they don't inherently have that link. And that's what they're depending on you for. So if you can point out the changes in physiology, in the wins in the gym, and you can tie those back to decisions they're making outside of the gym, that is that positive reinforcement loop. And just like with exercise, with diet, it's none of this is going to happen in a day, right? So it's about making consistent decisions that are better than the ones you would have made had you not had this intervention. So it's just about sustainability and compiling good decisions over a long time horizon, and then having the appropriate reward process along the way. Because if you can, like you said, if you can tie that back to performance in the gym and they get a win, 3 to 5 times a week in between those 14 weeks of blood labs, and then they get that big positive reinforcement because of that, that's even more buy-in. And that's how you keep this ball rolling.
Love it. Belly fat, support and structure. Make it happen. Subscribe. RX Radio. We'll see you next week.